Let's turn our attention here to Justin Baldoni. He responded to Ryan Reynolds' motion to dismiss himself from Baldoni's $400 million lawsuit. Remember that a couple weeks ago? Ryan Reynolds files the motion to get out of it. Well, oh my God. This is I don't know how Brian Friedman, the lawyer for Baldoni, I don't know how he sleeps. He must have cloned himself. Anyway, he starts his filing with this quote from Ryan Reynolds, and I've tried to find where it's from because it's just got to be from a movie and he's got to be joking, but starts with a quote from Ryan saying, "I've realized that I'm too big to fail at this point, so I just crush my enemies and drink their blood." I'm trying to imagine him saying it, and I think he had to be kidding, right? Anyway, the quote is from July 12th, 2024. They don't go on to say where it's from. So in this filing by Brian Friedman and Team Baldoni, Reynolds pretends that the Wayfarer party's first amended complaint, which means Justin's $400 million suit, fails to set forth any basis for his liability and that he merely acted as a supportive spouse. Not so, says Team Baldoni. Please. That complaint by Justin specifically alleges ample facts to support the Wayfarer party's claims against him based on both his direct actions and his liability as a co-conspirator. The Wayfarer parties, they go on, have gained additional information to plead further facts to support each of their claims against Ryan Reynolds. All right. There's some fights over jurisdiction in this thing. There's a difference between battling this out in New York and battling this out in Los Angeles. The conflict between the two states' laws is, California basically is a little stricter. New York, you can kind of say what you want a little more about people. The laws of New York and California also conflict when it comes to defamation. California stricter. Again, New York, you can say, "Hey, asshole," and then you're not really going to be taken to court for being, calling someone the whole of an ass legitimately. You can say more. Though New York may have some interest in this action because Reynolds resides in New York, California has a much more significant interest in this case because nearly all of the plaintiffs are residents of California or have their principal place of business there. The two corporate plaintiffs, which is Wayfarer Studios, Justin and his partner, Steve Sarowitz, and the movie entity, they're both incorporated and or have their principal place of business in California. The plaintiffs suffered injury to their reputations in California, and the economic losses to the plaintiffs, to Justin, were felt in California. Absolutely. Remember, Blake Lively, Ryan and Blake want this in New York. Blake Lively's original civil complaint, which launched the New York Times article 2 days later, basically the first shot fired, was filed as a California civil rights department. So that may bode well for Baldoni. Baldoni's team goes on to say where defamation is clear, it's on its face here. It is. To plead defamation, a plaintiff must allege a written or oral defamatory statement concerning the plaintiff, publication to a third party, which, remember, the New York Times picked all this stuff up. So Ryan Reynolds' contention that Justin Baldoni's $400 million lawsuit fails to identify defamatory statements he made falls flat on its face, they say. This is where it gets really sort of interesting with the William Morris Agency. Remember, the William Morris Agency is a big-time, powerful talent agency in Los Angeles. They represented, at the time, Baldoni and Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively, all the parties, and Wayfair. So this is amazing. So the Baldoni complaint alleges at least twice that Ryan Reynolds stated to William Morris executives, Baldoni's, which is representing everyone, that Baldoni is a sexual predator and that by implication, William Morris is in business with a sexual predator. They say the first statement made by Ryan was on July 15th, 2024, when Reynolds contacted Baldoni's agent, Danny Greenberg, for the purpose of making defamatory statements. On the call, Reynolds referred to Baldoni as a deranged predator and warned Greenberg that Baldoni should not attend the film's premiere the next month in August because no one wants him there. My source in the agency says yes, that's true. The second statement was on July 22nd, and this was at a week later, the Deadpool and Wolverine premiere in New York, when Ryan Reynolds told a senior William Morris executive that by representing Baldoni, William Morris was doing business with a sexual predator. So all the necessary people will be deposed here. They also allege that Ryan Reynolds was pressuring and then later demanded that William Morris cut ties with Baldoni. Obviously, massive, massive financial penalty there. These allegations are more than sufficiently specific, identifying the speaker and the listeners and why and where and when the statements were made. So Brian Friedman is saying, get out of here. This is straight up defamation. And it came with massive penalties. This is there is no way that Ryan Reynolds is going to be dismissed from this. And I just couldn't possibly imagine it. Now, they also allege Ryan Reynolds with Lively and Leslie Sloan, who is Blake and Ryan's publicist, they told the New York Times a false and damning story about an insidious PR sabotage operation deployed as revenge for sexual harassment complaints, knowing that the newspaper would publish it. There's no question that that requirement is satisfied, says Brian Friedman. As alleged, all the Wayfarer parties have become figures of infamy because of Ryan Reynolds' statements. That's true. And there's no way Times was not colluding. They didn't just write their own article. They had months of preparation in doing this. So the biggest thing, a big problem for Blake is the fact that, in the sexual harassment allegations that she makes against Baldoni, she says, amongst other things, he came into the trailer when he shouldn't have. Jamie Heath, his partner, showed birthing videos of his wife giving birth to prep her for her scene, giving birth. Then, they had she alleged that Baldoni hired a friend of his to be the doctor that's hovering down between her thighs for this scene when, he's a Shakespearean trained actor. Whether they knew each other before or not, who knows? And then, of course, the big one, that in the rooftop scene, the dancing scene where Blake and Baldoni are very close, Blake alleges that, Baldoni went off script and nibbled on her lip, and he did a little biting, and that was not in the script, and he shouldn't have done that, and he went off. Small problem for Blake here. You can't get away from the internet sleuths. They're just too good. There's too many of them out there. This one wasn't even that hard to find. So Blake does this movie in 2018 opposite Henry Golding, A Simple Favor. Henry Golding plays her husband. She plays a character, Emily Nelson. Golding plays her husband. And there's a scene, here's a screen grab, and we'll call it a screen grab, of a moment between, look at her left hand. Blake is firmly grabbing the junk of Henry Golding. Okay? Now, if you're going to go and you're going to complain in a big lawsuit, and this is a central part of her lawsuit, that he went off script, Baldoni went off script, he nibbled my lip, he got super creepy on me. Well, here's the biggest part. There is commentary from the DVD Blu-ray from that movie, Paul Feig, again, the director, of course, and there is commentary by Blake that, guess what? She improvised that package grabbing scene. Roll it.
So am I blaming my husband?
Right, am I saying he killed her?
This is one of my favorite additions that you came up with. I think it's nuts. And when you really went for it.
That's always awkward. And you're like, hey, hi, nice to meet you. Can I grab your nuts?
Hey, nice to meet you. Can I grab your nuts? And Paul Feig says, that was my favorite improvisation that you did. I loved it, Blake, when you were just like, oh my God, let's just go in the moment and grab Henry Golding's Bojangles. Come on. And a little lip nibble, that's a problem. Now, by the way, Henry Golding, a total gentleman. I looked at some footage of him in an interview, and he was like, you really, when you're filming these scenes of intimacy, you really sort of, run over with your partner. I'm going to put my hand here, then I'm going to slowly slide my hand to your rib cage, but not quite to the breast, and then they really calculate these things out. And now, of course, there's intimacy coordinators on all this stuff. Where was the intimacy coordinator on A Simple Favor when the package was grabbed by Blake Lively? This is a deadly one for her. It's very funny. It's very amusing.